I am Gloria Goff. I am actually in Jamaica, and I want to welcome you from across the Caribbean. And I'm sure there are persons logging on from outside the Caribbean, Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean. This afternoon, this session was put together so that we could hear your voice. We could hear your opinions. We could hear your experience on what COVID-19 means to you, the impact of COVID-19 on you and the people within your community. So even if it hasn't impacted you greatly and you know of someone within your community or people within persons with disabilities within your country, we want you to tell us about it. And we want you to participate, but you can put your comments in the chat. Before we go to that, anyhow, I would like to say that 2020 will be a year to remember. So will 2021. But in 2020 was when we all had the fear factor. We were crippled by fear, many of us. And we learned words like, even if we knew them before, we got to experience them. Lockdowns, wearing of masks, social distancing, 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, staying at home. In Jamaica, them say, "Tana your yard," right? And we learned, all of us knew people ages all of a sudden, because Miss Mary, who lived next door, had to turn our yard because the government said people over 65, people over 75, stay home. So we got even to know people private lives who didn't tell us before. And many of us, why it is so strong in my memory, especially today, Senator Morris and the University of the West Indies Center for Disability Studies had actually organized our regional disability conference last year. And it was at the first of the 2 days that it was announced that Jamaica's first case was discovered. And we had almost 300 people on the first day. And from COVID was announced in Jamaica, people started disappearing. We were lucky to end up with over 150 on the second day. So COVID-19, one moment.
Sorry?
The sign language interpreter.
Yes? Pin her. Okay. Yes, we will do this.
Okay. So COVID-19 is something that we'll never forget. We'll be telling our children and grandchildren about. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to the end of COVID-19. And each time we have the hope that it will end, we hear, and we started loosening up, we hear there's another spike, and again we have to lock down. Now, we are here today, as I said before, to discuss these issues. And before we go into your participation, apart from listening, we are going to have panelists dealing with certain topics. And each panelist will speak for no more than 5 minutes. And they'll be looking at the social, economic aspects of COVID-19, impact of COVID-19, and also the international response. We'll be looking at it, the impact on youth as well. And I'm welcoming all you young persons who have also joined, the older ones, of course, but we'll like to hear all your voices. So now I'm going to be chiming out for a while our first presenter, who is Senator Dr. Floyd Morris, the architect and engineer of this, along with the team who has worked with him. Senator Morris has now become a household name in Jamaica and is spreading across the Caribbean and internationally as well. And Senator Morris is a person with a disability. I wouldn't take time to tell you of all the awards he has received, but he's also a former president of our Senate here in Jamaica. He is presently the head of the Center for Disabilities on campus. Senator Morris, your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to acknowledge my fellow panelists who will be presenting, and also a special mention to Mrs. Paula Isturiz, who has given tremendous support for the conference and for this side event. I want to start by stating that the COVID pandemic has disturbed and disrupted all of our lives in the Caribbean, and it is more so for us individuals with disabilities. In academia, I have pointed to the fact that what has taken place in the COVID pandemic is a clash of the various models of disability, the charity model, the medical model, the social model, the rights-based model of disability. And why I say that is because when you look at where we are now, we are moving away. The globe is moving away from that charity-based model of disability where individuals would depend on the state and family for care and protection. And the COVID pandemic has brought most persons with disabilities right back to that place because they have had to depend on the state and family members for survival, because most economies have been locked down and these individuals have to be dependent on others for support. And we have seen the situation, the problems bedeviling persons with disabilities in the public health sector. A lot of persons with disabilities who would have contracted the COVID pandemic never had problems with health professionals who have been trained to relate to persons with disabilities in a particular context. And then you have the situation of the social model in terms of the barriers that exist within societies to persons with disabilities and restrict our participation. The challenges, especially in the education system, with access to technology for children with disability, restricting them in the education system at this time when online learning is of paramount importance. And then, you know, the rights-based approach, which, you know, speaks to the rights of individuals with disabilities to certain fundamental developmental ingredients, so to speak, you know, the right to education, the right to health care, the right to social protection. All of these rights have been transgressed in the COVID pandemic because a lot of persons with disabilities have been experiencing significant challenges then. So the COVID pandemic has placed us in a precarious position and has exposed the deep underbelly of persons with disabilities in the Caribbean. And what has to happen in the post-COVID environment is that we have to build the resilience capacity of persons with disabilities so that if another pandemic or a disaster should hit the region, these individuals will be able to withstand the disaster or the pandemic. And there is where we have to make sure that we invest in the education of persons with disabilities. We have to make sure that we train professionals within the health services to relate to persons with disabilities. We have to make sure that societies become more accessible to persons with disabilities. We have to make sure that we build meaningful social protection systems in societies to protect persons with disabilities. And that is how I see it in terms of the situation of the COVID pandemic and the effects on persons with disabilities in the Caribbean. And I will cut at this point in time and get back to moderator before she start pulling my jacket. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Am I being heard?
Yes.
On the mic? Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Morris. I am really surprised. It means I need to moderate more often with Senator. I didn't even have to give him a time signal. Wonderful. Thank you. And Senator Pointed dealt with some of the issues that faced persons with disabilities, that have been facing persons with disabilities through the continued pandemic. And he has also mentioned some of the things that need to be done to ensure that should we have another pandemic, and more than likely we will, or a disaster, that we are not caught off guard and that we are better prepared to deal with it. Thank you, Senator. And now I will ask Leroy Phillips. He is our next presenter. Stand by, Leroy, while I'll tell him a few little secrets about you. Yes, Leroy Phillips is a young person, because that decision was made by the committee that we needed to hear from a young person. And Leroy Phillips is known in Guyana and is becoming well known outside of Guyana, mainly because of technology. And that is one of the good things that COVID has brought. Better use, more use of technology. Leroy is a youth advocate for persons with disabilities. He was given the Queen's Youth Leadership Award in 2015, and he's into media and is presently an employee at NCN in Guyana. Welcome, Leroy. Let us hear from you.
Thanks very much for the introduction. Thanks very much. As was just pointed out or announced by my moderator there, my name is Leroy Phillips, and I'm from Georgetown, Guyana, the capital city, which is home to more than 200 species of birds and beautiful colonial architecture. My task today is to convey the effects of COVID-19 on the disability population in Guyana, though we all may have encountered different challenges over the past 13 months or so. You would find significant similarities emanating from presentations here today. When the news broke in Guyana about the coronavirus, many Guyanese were of the belief that it was not likely to arrive in our slice of paradise, but it eventually did. It was on March 11 that the first confirmed case of COVID-19 became public, and the race for items to protect against the virus started. They were taking their health seriously, and there is no blaming these people, and those are the ones without disabilities. But sadly so, as you'd imagine, persons with disabilities were placed at a disadvantage for obvious reasons. The world was plunged into a state of conundrum. Following the announcement of the virus being declared a pandemic, this tossed everything in the air worldwide. In Guyana, these students were grateful students with physical forms of disabilities, and those who require therapeutic services were among the most hard. It became more apparent assistive technologies, access to resource personnel, recreation programs, extracurricular activities, and water, sanitation, and even hygiene programs. In the role of the parent, and the digital divide between learners related to a crucial area implemented to curb the spread of the virus in the transportation sector, which stopped altogether in some respects. Persons with disabilities who relied on these methods for transport were unable to travel even for basic necessities or critical medical appointments. And this COVID-19 pandemic is definitely having an impact on your health. To or from the location. Calls and cries resurfaced to remind policymakers that persons with disabilities are more likely to experience adverse socioeconomic outcomes, such as less education, higher poverty rate, an integral role by living up to their causes, and the disability community in Guyana fits from the appropriate supplies. And we trust that with all aid organizations have been doing a continued prepare the Caribbean in the future. Or disease. So with that, I'll bring my the messages in both my speech and Mr. Floyd Morris would go across borders, so that in the coming, because we're still back vaccine, that is, in your part of the world, but you're definitely of this when it is all done and dusted. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Leroy. Unfortunately, your internet seemed to have been quite a bit unsteady. So we heard bits and pieces, but we heard enough to know that you actually gave a fairly good picture of what existed or still exists in some ways in Guyana. And I think when you speak about the challenges in terms of mobility, getting around, and health, education, and the issue of people not having the necessary technologies, you're speaking the language of many countries in the Caribbean. Thanks again, Leroy. And if you have anything to add, of course, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Thanks much. Okay, now we come to our third presenter, whom we have become very familiar with during the planning of this event. We have Paula Isturiz, and she is the program specialist at UNESCO. And she will be giving us, talking about the impact of COVID on youth and women and the response and the United Nations response. Paula, it's over to you for your 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. UNESCO is honored to be present today in this side event organized within the framework of the Special Ministerial Conference for specific legislation for persons with disabilities in the Caribbean. And we would like to express our sincere appreciation to the team at the Center for Disability Studies who led the organization of this side event. In the Caribbean, there are over 1 million persons living with some form of disability. And this actually amounts to more than the population of certain countries in the region. And the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has further compounded the inequalities and the challenges faced by persons with disabilities. Accessing public health and services has been rendered more difficult, while physical distancing measures exacerbated isolation and even reduced independence. Concerning social protection, a study revealed that of 195 countries that had announced special protection benefits, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, only 75 countries included persons with disabilities. In many cases, it was also difficult for persons with disabilities to even access these grants or benefits. So when looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, we think it's important to analyze the intersections of gender and age amongst other factors to really be able to address the barriers that arise during the response and recovery process. So, for example, youth account for 63% of the population across the Caribbean. So it's a key population demographic. And COVID has really affected the youth population in the region in both education and employment. Young people with disabilities across the Caribbean, schools and universities left 7 million students grappling with the new reality of distance learning, and children and youth with disabilities that do not have access to the technologies have not been able to experience remote learning. So this has deepened gaps and leading to significant learning loss. Furthermore, young people working in the services, sales, and informal economy have lost their jobs or seen their income reduced. And amongst these youth, then young people with disabilities are more likely to lose their jobs and experience greater difficulties in finding employment. And women have also been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, given that both children and adults with disabilities are at higher risk of violence, and that there has been a substantial increase of violence against women in the midst of the pandemic. It can be inferred that women and girls have been at an even greater risk of experiencing domestic violence since the onset of the pandemic. Furthermore, statistics have shown that women with disabilities have experienced higher income reduction when compared to men with disabilities. And there's also gendered barriers, which have impacted access to healthcare services, as well as sexual and reproductive health screenings. And so this is important then to think about intersectional response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, an integrated human rights-based approach is necessary to ensure that persons with disability are not left behind in the COVID-19 response. And the United Nations has developed a series of recommendations to highlight the importance of disability inclusion and to ensure a most robust recovery process. And these recommendations include, for example, ensuring that target actions and mainstreaming of disability in all COVID response and recovery. So this means really developing specific disability-specific measures, such as social protection mechanisms that include informal workers and women, and also mechanisms that can take into consideration primary caregivers, which are often women, as well as their families. Another recommendation set by the UN is to ensure accessibility of COVID-19 related information, as well as facilities and services to ensure that public services are accessible to everyone on an equal basis without discrimination. The third recommendation is to ensure the meaningful consultation and active participation of persons with disabilities in the different stages of the COVID-19 recovery and response. And this is key because persons with disabilities can make many significant contributions to addressing this crisis. For example, if we take into consideration the lived realities of this population. This can lead to better decision making, and experiences with remote working conditions provide insights on new employment opportunities for persons with disability beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. And the final recommendation that is given by the UN is to establish accountability mechanisms to ensure disability inclusion. And this refers to having monitoring mechanisms that can really ensure that persons with disabilities are being reached and capturing disaggregated data. So to conclude then, disability inclusion is necessary to ensure realizing the pledge of achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which really emphasizes the social, economic, and political inclusion of persons with disabilities. And in this regard, UNESCO stands ready to continue its work with the University of the West Indies to continue mobilizing knowledge and strengthening capacities and engaging especially young people with disability and women especially to advance the rights of persons with disabilities in the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula. Our panelists have presented, and I think all three of them have come to the conclusion that I'm a hard taskmaster. I didn't have to remind anyone that their time was up. Thank you all. And in terms of the presentation by Paula, she mentioned some significant issues, right? And I'm sure one of the things that stands out in my mind, though, is two things. One was the fact that 75 countries did not mention disability or persons with disabilities as among the vulnerable persons who should be supported. And I have also listened to quite a number of webinars and speeches from individuals, both local and international, who have mentioned vulnerable groups during the pandemic, and some have not put disabilities, persons with disabilities, among the groups of persons that they consider are most vulnerable. But we know, based on this pandemic, if we weren't sure before about the vulnerability of persons with disabilities, we all know now. We have experienced it ourselves, and we have also experienced it vicariously from other persons around us. Now, it is your time to participate. Oh, sorry, I did not mention my second point that's hit me, was the recommendation by Paula that an accountability mechanism be put in place. That is critical, because if we have that, then people who have to offer services or whatever support would know that they have to abide by the rules governing their operations, or they would be held accountable. Thank you very much, Paula. Now it's your time, and we hope you will participate. You can ask questions of the panelists, or you can make your own comments based on the experiences, as we said, that you have or you know others have. So let us hear from you. Raise your hands, or you can put if you want to speak, raise your hands and you'll be allowed to speak using your microphone. And
Perhaps they can introduce themselves. Just quickly introduce themselves to see who they are.
yes, and one thing we want to know, before you speak, say your name and the country in which you are, right? So
There's a person called Beverly LeBlanc.
Beverly LeBlanc.
Beverly, yes, who has raised her hand, so we will allow her to speak.
Okay, Beverly, your time. We have to give a few seconds for the technology.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, my name is Beverly LeBlanc and I'm from the Commonwealth of Dominica, and I'm delighted to be part of this panelist. And my role here is to speak as the executive director of an organization which focuses on providing educational needs for children with disabilities. I have a special education school, and we ourselves were impacted by the COVID because we didn't have a physical space. And quickly we had to be innovative and creative as to how we were going to provide services for our students. And we were able to mobilize our resources. So right now we have students who are receiving services online. That is those who are more high functional. We also did home-based services for those who needed skills. And then we have the younger ones coming once a week, 4 days a week, thanks to the Ministry of Education for their support by giving us a space to have our services. We were also able to get some funding from the UNICEF, and we were able to deliver over 250 packages to families and persons with disabilities. And we also have started doing our own database. We are now have enumerators doing a database because we do not have data in Dominica. We did a billboard in creating the awareness of persons with disabilities. So even if, in spite of the challenges that we face, we were able to be very innovative and creative to maintain that awareness and to let people know that persons with disabilities have to be included. I am really grateful for the information that is being shared, and I'm happy to see Dr. Morris and Leroy. Leroy has been very instrumental with working with me with a particular young lady by connecting her with so many resources who is visually impaired, and Leroy has been really a mentor to her. So I just wanted to share that despite the fact that we as a school were impacted, we were able to mobilize our resources and be very innovative and take initiative to reach out to our community.
Great, Beverly. Thank you. And as I said, out of every evil, they say come forth some good. And COVID allowed you to draw on your resources that you had but didn't know you have. The capacity to be more creative in supporting the children you serve. Thank you very much for sharing.
There's a person that just has the letters SHN who wants to speak.
Someone who has the letters SHN, you're allowed to speak. SHN. Shun. Hello?
Are you hearing me?
Yes, SHN.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Shanil. I'm from Jamaica. I wanted to say first of all, thank you for inviting me to this meeting, and I wanted to say that there's been a positive effect with the pandemic on the disabled community, because and I can speak for the blind community, of course. It has allowed us to become more versed with our technology, because we aren't coming in face to face again, especially when I was doing classes, like computer classes and braille classes. I had to stop after a while when there was a spike, and I realized that that helped me with learning the different technology. Get to learn to use the WhatsApp and the Zoom and the different platforms. It has really helped to increase my knowledge about the different technology. But the disadvantages, I want to say, especially with the transport, because blind persons depend on most of their sense of hearing, smelling, and feeling. And in this time of COVID, they stress on sanitizing and 6 feet apart and everything. But when we are traveling on the street, persons are always grabbing after us, wanting to assist us. They don't come and answer kindly if they want to assist. They always grab after you. So I always find myself wearing long sleeve clothing because they're always grabbing after you. And especially when you're going up and down stairs or on the bus, they always say hold on to the railing, and you have to be touching different things. It puts us more in danger, really. So what I realized, and I've been hearing it from other persons as well, it has forced most of us to stay in and not go out. But we don't really want to come outside of our houses. And it's also in the working world out there as well, because when they're thinking about letting off persons because they have to have social distancing in the offices or so on, I realize that the first persons that they think of letting go are the disabled persons. And that has really been a disadvantage to us. There are a lot of disabled persons have lost their jobs or are unemployed in this time of the COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Shaniel. Thanks. COVID has even changed the dress code, eh? But we recognize the issues you're speaking about. The one you spoke about, the number of persons who have lost their jobs and who have been let off. That is sad to hear. However, we know that quite a number of persons have lost their jobs or who used to do their own, have self-employed. You know, maybe they used to sell stuff, move around on their own. They suffered a lot because they were limited their mobility because of the social distancing and because some of the companies had actually sent people to work from home. A lot of the workers were not there for them to even peddle their goods. So yes, we know that COVID has its really, as a matter of fact, the truth be told, the negative far outweighs the positive. But there, you did mention some positive about your ability to learn the technology. Thank you for sharing, Shaniel.
There's a person called UWICDS Radio.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Shanice, if you can put just your full name on the chat, that would be great, so we can just register on the speakers list. Thank you.
Did you hear that, Shaniel?
Yes, I
Put your
heard.
full name on the chat so that we don't have to call you Shin. UVC radio. Oh, we have a radio now that speaks. Okay, UVC radio, you're allowed to
I know the connection.
speak.
Can everyone hear the talking radio?
Yes, we're hearing a UVC. Can we go ahead, introduce yourself?
Excellent. So, of course, my name is not UVC, but and I'm certainly not a talking
Say your
radio.
name again. Say your name again, please.
Yes, we would want to know your name.
Say your name again.
So I'm Gary.
Okay.
Right. And so
Gary what?
I'm Gary Camera. And so if you'd like, I'll go ahead and put my name here in the chat panel. So y'all have it. Let me spell it correctly. How about that? There you go. All right. So now I'm a radio that can talk and spell. All right. So ultimately, just wanted to talk about something. So UVC is United Vision Connect, which is an organization, an international organization that works with helping blind people with technology and networking from an international standpoint. And so one of the things that myself and a good friend of mine named John Lee, we work at a company called LC Industries. I didn't mention where I'm from. So I'm in the United States, in Durham, North Carolina. And so we ultimately work in IT, customer service, distribution, as far as LC Industries. But the thing is, we saw in the midst of crisis and opportunity. And so what we did last year throughout May and June, as well as part of April, was to teach it's interesting that Chanel brought up that topic. We actually taught technology as far as JAWS and native Windows applications in order to help people be more productive in the workplace, especially that a majority of people were transitioning to a remote work environment. And so just one of the things that we did, and something that we hope to continue to do in other more advanced coursework, such as accessibility certifications and different things like that, to try to help people become greater assets to their communities and their countries, and hopefully put them in a better economic position, especially those with disabilities. Because I think that with the remote work, it has really helped to open up some doors for us. And so it's just something that we did regarding the pandemic itself.
Thank you very much, Gary.
welcome.
Very interesting. And again, it comes down to creativity, innovativeness, because here it is, you use the situation of the pandemic to teach other persons skills that they themselves can now market and use to earn a living during the pandemic and after. Thank you very much for sharing, Gary. And now we have Damien Rose, who would like to share. Damien, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Damian Rose. I am from Jamaica. Well, let me start. When the COVID hit Jamaica and all the workplaces and everywhere was shutting down, I was, kind of getting worried, because I was wondering, well, first and foremost, will my workplace be able to pay me during the pandemic? And thankfully, our organization, the Jamaica Society for the Blind, which is an NGO, we survived, but thankfully. But apart from that, on the side, I got jobs, and I am an audio editor. I do podcasts, I do radio shows, and anything audio. So during this time, I was able to get a lot of work, including an international podcast that I did. I edited an international podcast that was for international medical graduates who want to matriculate into the US medical system. And I edited a 12 part podcast for them, and I earned some money. Apart from that, I was also able to upgrade my skills in terms of learning about the different online, because everything went online. So I was able to learn about Zoom. I was able to learn about the Google Meet and all these other things. I was also able to get my business registered as a legitimate business here in Jamaica. So for me, it was more of a win-win situation for me. So as a blind person, I would like to advise all the persons on the chat. Sometimes you have blind persons who they would sit back and they would say that, listen, technology is not for me, and I can't do this and I can't do that. In these times, we have to get with the technology. We have to go forward, learn it, because you can earn differently from your everyday paying job. You can earn a lot more money online, doing online jobs, and just working for other persons. You will be able to earn a lot more than you probably are earning at your own workplace. So I would say, guys, let's get with the technology. It's out there. Let's get with it. Let's do it and move the disabled community forward as best as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. You have said some of what others have experienced, and two things has come out of this. It looked like COVID has been very good to you. I didn't hear a negative. The second thing is that it seems that the next time Senator has his conference, he can ask you to sponsor.
Oh, geez.
So like you're doing well. All right. We were supposed to close off at 6, but we started a little late, and boy, the chat is lighting up. We have about 7 persons waiting, so we're going to ask the persons, when we let you in, we're not going to say rush you, but try and make it as pointed as possible so that more persons can participate. So the next person
is Judy Kenisha Sango.
Judy Kenisha Sango, you are allowed to speak. Judy?
Okay, let's move on to the next person.
All right, Judy, since you have not yet connected, we're going to have somebody else go and then we'll get back to you. Sydney Watson, you're now allowed to speak. Did they raise their hand to speak or they have a chat?
No, everything's on to speak.
Sydney?
Okay, good afternoon.
Maybe you need to unmute.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Okay, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias.
Stop.
¿Y usted?
Okay, okay.
So, pleasant evening to all the panelists. Senator Floyd Morris and Ms. Gloria Goff, and also Senora Paula Isturiz Cabero. Okay, thank you for having me. I am Sydney Watson. I am a teacher of Spanish and French. I am from Jamaica, and it is wonderful being a part of this discussion because it is very relevant. I want to get straight ahead. I made a little note while the panelists were speaking. I have heard Dr. Floyd Morris, he mentioned society become more accessible, meaningful social security program. I also heard Leroy and of course, Senora Cabero and what the UNESCO has been doing. She mentioned a very important point that of children and women are more at risk. And on a sad note, I want to say that just this week, it is reported that a woman of the she's disabled, and unfortunately, someone broke in on her and raped her, and that's just one case. We can consider the unreported cases and the level of violence meted out against persons with disability. I want to say also that what Shanil mentioned was very relevant, and also what Gary said. In particular, Damien mentioned get with technology, get online, but I want to point out that the challenge is that many persons are having among the community of disabled is that they lack the resources, they lack the devices. As a teacher myself, I had to teach online, and it is posing a great challenge to me because of the COVID pandemic. I cannot, basically, it's so challenging for me to move from where I am at now, where I currently live, to actually go to a physical work space to work. because of transportation issue. The cost alone is too much. And not to mention when it rains, there are lots of complaint in terms of driver wanting to, lift the wheelchair, put it in the back and so on. They say a whole lot of stuff. And so that is very challenging for me. So to get a job online, it is difficult because even today I spoke with a principal of a particular school, and the building is not accessible to wheelchair. Everything is upstairs. And that is a challenge for me because I am here at home. I am living on my own. My brother is living in the same yard, but I am basically independent. I have to provide for myself. I have to meet the financial obligations. However, if I am not able to earn an income, then that is going to be even more challenging for me. It takes away my level of independence. So yes, I agree with Damien, but there are many persons who can't even participate in this event now because they don't have the devices. Smartphones, they don't have it. A laptop, they don't have it. So they are cut off right away. And what I would say to that is that the government, and I'm glad that Senator Floyd-Morse is here because I have always wanted to reason with him in terms of what we can do to help solve some of the problems we're having. The thing that is very important for us to know is that many persons are afraid to travel because, especially for females.
Sydney, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but
yes,
can you just please quickly wrap it up? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I want to say that it is very challenging for us as persons with disability because of the lack of resources and the lack of involvement in policies that are being made. I would love for the government to involve us, include us. Don't just make policies and then bring it to us. Thank you.
Hello? Yes, Sydney, thank you very much. But you say you're from Jamaica? And therefore, there are organizations, we might not all be able to solve all the issues you have, but you could communicate to discuss options, right? So thank you for sharing. There's the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. There is the Combined Disabilities Association. There are those two that you can maybe contact to discuss your issues and just to find out if there are options you could look at, okay? Thanks for sharing and being a part of this. Can we get the next person in?
Yes, I'm just going to share quickly. There's somebody that wrote on the chat. So Christopher from Barbados, and he was just sharing that he was an intern at a bank in Barbados, but due to COVID and after his contract ended, he had to remain home.
Oh, we're sorry to hear that, Christopher. But as we said earlier, those are some of the challenges people face. That is that is an impact of COVID, and we are hoping that it's not also an impact of how people view disability, persons with disabilities. So I am hoping that when things settle back, you will be able to regain your job at the bank or somewhere else. Thanks for sharing. Oh, Senator Morris needs to say.
What is happening in the COVID environment is where you see companies are right sizing because of the pandemic. The first call seemed to be persons with disabilities, and that is something that I have heard. I am yet to get any sort of data to support the argument, but I mean, it seems as if there's a commonality where that is concerned.
Okay. Did this move? Hello?
It's okay. Yeah.
It's on? Yeah. Okay. So maybe what you could do in Barbados is get a feel of how many other persons have the same experience you have. And then maybe you could speak with the Barbados National Council and see how best they can advocate on your behalf, you and whoever else behalf, even if it's you alone. Thanks for sharing that experience.
We're going to give the floor to Octavia.
Octavia, you're next.
Hello, good evening. Octavia
evening.
Timothy. Yes, I'm the coordinator
Hold
for
on, say
special education.
Octavia, Octavia,
Timothy.
and you're speaking from?
I'm from Dominica.
Okay.
Yes, I represent the Ministry of Education as the coordinator for special education. And I'm happy to be here this evening. I missed quite a bit of the session because I had some, signing in issues, but I'm glad that I'm here. So thank you for that opportunity. And in terms of the impact of COVID-19, I would want to look at the positives first. And one of the positives that came out of that was the fact that teachers, those who teach the children with disabilities, with special needs, there was a focus on getting them trained in the use of technology. And so, some of them had devices, a few of them, but they were not really Okuma with, the different platforms that could be used for online learning. And so one of the focus was on getting the teachers trained in using the technology so that they could use it with the children. And so even now, although we have had a full-time school from September, the teachers were able to utilize that skill that they learned during the time that COVID was, we were under lockdown, and they are able to use it now, even now in the classroom. And also it gave the parents an opportunity themselves to be more knowledgeable as to how to use these platforms. Of course, we did have, another thing is that we were able to get a few devices for the children, because you find that, before COVID, attention wasn't really placed on whether children had devices that they could use in the schools. They had to wait on what was available probably for the teacher, the computers and so on. But now quite a few children, I was able to get a few devices for some of our children with special needs. The downside though was that some of the areas, there was no connectivity. And so that posed a problem for the children when they were at home. And even where you had connectivity, you had a lack of devices in the home. And so probably some of them, it was only the mother's phone that was available. And so, I think, although they are already children at risk, and so they were losing out from the fact that they were at home and they had no devices, they had no connectivity. But with the coming back to school and with the teachers' knowledge of using the online platforms and with the children having devices, then we know, in the future, at least there is something that they can fall back on, because now everybody is more aware and parents were able to be more comfortable for their students learning. And during the time of lockdown, what we tried to do was, as much as possible, the few who had devices, the teachers were able to go online and teach them through that medium. But those who didn't have devices, what happened was that the teachers were able to come together at the school and put packages together for them, work packages. And so the parents would come in, pick up these work packages on a Monday, go home with it, help the children, and come back on a Friday, give it to the teachers. The teachers would discuss it with the parents, get it corrected. And so that was the kind of interaction that went on during the time that, schools were closed. And so, COVID had its positives and it also had its negatives. But we were happy that for us in Dominica, we were able to have face-to-face classes from September up till now. So we had a whole year of face-to-face classes. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Octavia. And it's good to hear that. We wish we could say that in Jamaica. which means that you don't have the learning loss that a number of our students here are suffering.
Right.
I'd like to find out from the interpreter if there's a deaf person, if a person who is deaf wants to speak, or if someone online who is deaf wants to speak. Interpreter? All right.
There's nothing, you don't have anything.
You said somebody else.
Yes.
Tashian? Tashian?
Tashian, yes.
Can we now hear from Tashian? We'll take maybe another 2 calls after this. Can we now hear from Tashian? You're letting her in?
Yeah. But let's do somebody else. Hold on, we'll open the door for somebody else.
Who is it?
Jason Clark.
All right, Tashian, you have gotten cold feet or your technology is giving a little problem. Let's hear from Jason Clark. And then we'll hear, after Jason, we'll hear from Katie.
Yes. It's a pleasant good night to the panel.
Yes, Jason.
Yes, I'm Jason Clark, and I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, specifically Tobago, and I represent the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of Disabled People International. So good to hear you. Good to hear you, Gloria, Miss Gloria, and my brother. So we are discussing today. Yes. You hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So we are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities, and we identify with all the other speakers before because we here in Trinidad and Tobago, especially our organization here, have been experiencing some challenges, many challenges. And due to the lockdown and the closure, especially of the beach, yeah, we haven't been able to pursue our therapeutic interventions, especially in the water, because we use the beach so that we could exercise and maintain our health, our healthy living. And then again, because of the lockdown, we haven't. Some of us put on a little few pounds. So this is really really a huge impact for us. And as you mentioned a while ago, persons who are deaf and hard of hearing. I have some friends who many of my friends do lip reading, and because of the mask, that's a huge thing here where you're not able to see persons who require the use of read lips. The mask would block the lips, and so that's a challenge I highlighted since last year for International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So I just wanted to highlight that because our organization, DPI in Trinidad and Tobago, or Trinidad and Tobago chapter, we have been able to meet as an executive via Zoom, which we need to really explore because you have to use technology because we have to proceed. So our members, we have a chat over the WhatsApp, so we have been able to keep in touch with each other. But as an executive, I admit we need to do better. And then again, lastly, before I conclude too, that because of the regulations and the information that's not available in accessible formats, now and again you'll have the sign language interpretation, but the information generally would not be available in accessible format. So this needs to be looked at. And as the vaccination program again will have some challenges because we was able to get 1 day here in Tobago for persons with disabilities to come and get their vaccine, and then some people was able to get be vaccinated in their vehicles. So we tried to lobby with our governments, with the CMOH, the County Medical Officer of Health, so we could continue having persons who are physically and otherwise challenged to be vaccinated. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jason. And you really brought up some issues that have been mentioned now and again, but not often enough, especially the one that affects persons who are deaf, who lip read, and not just only who lip read, but who sign language is also all about expression. So facial expression and body language and all of that. The other thing you mentioned, which many of us talk about, missing the beach and missing the pool. We never ever, we don't often enough think of it as therapy. And especially for persons with physical disabilities, it is critical. Thank you very much for sharing. Now we're asking, apart from the 5 persons whose hands have been up, we're asking others not to do so because we cannot take any more calls. And the persons who we're going to include, since your hands are already up, each of you only have no more than 2 minutes to make your point. Sorry about that, but we have to allow you in because you're there, but we've actually run out of time. Katie, can we hear you now?
Hi, a pleasant evening to everyone.
Katie?
Yeah, it was Katie.
Hello. Hi, good evening.
Yes, Katie. Yes,
you share your
Katie,
name?
we're hearing you. Could you give us your name and where
All
you
right,
are?
KT is abbreviated for Kerwin Thomas. And Kerwin Thomas, I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I am representing the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of Disabled People International as the public relations officer for the organization. I would just like to thank Mr. Floyd and all the panelists for inviting our organization to be a part of this auspicious occasion. I think that in moving forward, definitely hearing from the various members of the Caribbean and the wider world to get involved in terms of some of the discussion so that we'll be able to be informed and also know exactly how we move forward, because I think that information is so critical as we as persons with disabilities move forward, trying to kind of move away. And one of the topics I want to kind of raise this evening is the topic of mental health as it relates to persons with disabilities, especially as we are dealing with this topic of COVID-19 and how it has affected persons with disability in our region. You know, because there are a lot of fears that is surmounting amongst persons with disabilities in terms of, one, lack of information, in terms of how do we navigate through this critical time, and also how are persons with disabilities, how would they be able to access the proper health care necessary in them for us to move forward. So I would like to suggest that even as we move forward, that we'll have proper coping mechanisms to treat with mental health of persons with disabilities so that they will be able to know exactly how they'll be able to navigate through these rough times. And then we'll be able to get more psychologists and all these professional people involved so that we can set up programs and workshops to treat with such. I thank you so much. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you very much, Katie. Thanks for sharing. And now we move to Shauna Kay. Shauna Kay?
New. Hi, good afternoon. Or evening, correction. It's afternoon. Good evening, all.
Evening.
Okay, I am Shauna K. Ines. I am a para taekwondo athlete for Jamaica, and I'll be representing Jamaica at the Paralympics in Tokyo this August. Okay, so I'm part of sport and I'm passionate about that area. And first of all, I didn't have much knowledge about person with disability, in Jamaica, because my family support, I grew as a normal among able-bodied persons. But since being a part of the sport, I've now been exposed and, became more understanding of persons with disability, be wheelchair, blind, deaf, etc. But I was given knowledge regarding with the Jamaica Council of Persons with Disability, and I got myself registered. But based on other persons that I've interacted with, they know nothing about Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, and how they're saying there's not a lot of support, etc. Like with our buildings, especially with our buildings and especially with jobs. Quite a few persons has highlighted that when they send out their jobs and they put about their disability, they don't get the job. They don't give it a call for the interview. But when they don't put it there, they get calls. And when they go to the interview, the interviewer be like, why you didn't highlight it about their disability? So they're saying that when they put it, they don't get a call. So that's like, that's like coming off as a form of discrimination to persons with disability, whether you're blind, wheelchair, etc. Also with the sporting area,
Shauna?
Mhm.
Shauna,
I'm
I think what you're saying is very important and would be suitable for another forum that we discuss on disabilities. And now that you know about the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, I hope you're sharing it with them. And there are also quite a number of other organizations. One question I want to ask in keeping with our theme today, as a para athlete, did the COVID affect your training schedule?
Oh yes, it did tremendously. I have to know because of the lack of facility in Kingston. I have to know being going to Mandeville for training. So it has affected it big time. I must say, big time. But nevertheless, I still pushing out my effort to go there. But I'm gonna say, if I wasn't a person, because I'm a born amputee, right-handed, if I was a wheelchair-bound person, or somebody visually impaired, how would I still get to go to training because of COVID? That's what I'm saying. So even yes, the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities is there, but there's a lot of persons still saying that it is not enough. More needs to be done. I think
All
Jamaica
right.
persons
So,
need to do more
Shauna K,
marketing. Mhm.
yeah, Shauna K,
I'm here.
and I understand what you're saying. So will you be sharing the information about the council with them? There's also the
I do
Combined
that. I do
Disabilities
that.
Association.
That's what I'm
All
saying to you.
right.
That's what
So
I
then
do.
remember, we have some personal responsibilities too. So once they hear about the council or whichever other organization, now they need to make contact so that they can gather more information, or they can go on the internet, read the newspaper, and learn more about the organization. But we take your recommendation that we need to be more out there, although we have been, but sometimes people pay attention now to other things. So thank you for sharing and all the best. Whether you win a goal or not, we'll be behind you because you're representing our country.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Shauna K, bye.
And Shauna, if you could just please also share your email with us on the chat for UNESCO is also working on sports, so we would love to contact you afterwards. Thank you.
Share your email.
All right. No problem.
Okay, the final person. Asif Khan, your turn. That's the last person.
We have one more person called the senator.
So we have Asif Khan and then finally the senator. Asif? Maybe it takes a little while for them to unmute. And...
Good evening,
all
everyone.
right. Oh, yes. Yes,
Am I being
Asif,
heard?
go ahead.
All right. So, Honorable Senator Dr. Floyd Morris, moderator, the panelists, and participants, good evening. My name is Asif Khan. I am from Guyana. I have background in international relations. Since the senator will be responding after me, I guess he can probably address my question, because I think most of the contributors would have highlighted or touched on most of the issues that have been affecting the lives of persons with disabilities in the Caribbean. What I would like to ask the Honorable Senator is, I know he has responsibilities as the CARICOM rapporteur on persons with disabilities. What I'd like to know from him is first of all, what has CARICOM been doing to engage in terms of engaging regional governments during the past 15 months as it relates to having governments in the region do more for persons with disabilities? And how satisfied are you, Senator, with CARICOM's involvement in getting governments to comply more? Thanks.
Asif, We only have a few minutes. That would take Senator some time. And secondly, with the focus of this evening is to look at the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities. So I'm going to give you Senator's email, and you can send him the question, and I can guarantee that he will respond. So his email address is morrisfloyd@gmail, as simple as that. morrisfloyd@gmail. We wish we could, .com. We wish
Morris-
we could accommodate the question, but we don't have much time, and it would take some time.
No problem, Ms. Moderator. I appreciate it.
All right, and thanks for sharing. Thanks for being a part of the event, okay? The last person, this senator,
I don't know who the senator is.
and this is not Senator Morris.
I don't know.
Somebody's asking, what are we going to do?
Good evening, all.
So you can't answer them?
The senator is over.
The senator, you're available?
I am available. I'm wondering if you're.
Oh, okay. You're speaking from the upper or the lower house.
Oh my God.
Go ahead.
Well, I am no longer in the house. My name is Rosemond Clary. Rosemond Clary is my name. I'm calling from the island of St. Lucia. I'm a former senator here in the Parliament of St. Lucia. Basically, I know you don't have much time. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I listened, and of course, I'm happy for what I've heard. I just want to share with you quickly that unfortunately, here in St. Lucia, from what I've gathered, very little has been done in regards to persons with disabilities when it comes to COVID-19. It's rather unfortunate, but persons with disabilities are really taking a bad blow, and there's really nothing in place for them. As a matter of fact, even I had a couple of colleagues of mine with disabilities, unfortunately, who passed as a result of COVID. So we're really having a hard time here in St. Lucia. So I really hope that we can probably chat with you a little more in the future about that. And thank God we have a new government in place officially from last night. So I am certainly going to bring that to my government and hope that we can start putting things in place primarily for persons with disabilities. Of course, by extension, other persons, but primarily us, the less fortunate, most vulnerable ones. So that's really what I want to share with you all. I want to thank you for the opportunity, and just sit and sweet. Thank you again.
Congratulations, Senator, your party win.
Absolutely, and I am
things to come elsewhere too.
I am contemplating. I'm looking at the possibility of returning back to the Senate. There is that possibility.
Okay, well, we
serious.
need the Senate. We need you guys in the Parliament, of course. We know the
Definitely,
benefits of having our own in the Parliament.
Yeah, and
Thank you
I'm the first person
very
with a
much for
disability in St.
sharing.
Lucia to have that experience. So I'm really happy about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can join us on our YouTube channel link, tomorrow for the continuation of the conference. Now, thank you everyone for participating. I'm not giving the thank you because Mrs. Sharmali Cardoza Camera will be coming to wrap up. But before she does that, I want to thank Sharmali, Jason Ricketts, and Shavane Daly, and the other persons in the office who might have assisted them, Delane and others. Thank you very much for organizing this session. I think people really participated, and it looked like 3 hours would not be enough. Thanks a lot. And now and it was my pleasure to moderate this session. And now I'm handing over to Mrs. Cardoza Camera to wrap up.
I'm just going to say one real quick thing. There was a question on what we would do with the follow-up from UNESCO's side. We will just do kind of a brief letter, document of recommendations that stem from this this panel, and we feel that it should have been longer and that we could have had a stakeholder consultation to really get in the deep dive of the impact of COVID-19 on persons with disabilities. And just really quickly, if you would like to stay engaged with what UNESCO will be continuing to do with persons and for persons with disabilities, please just write your name, your email on the chat so we can save it. And with that, thank you so much again to the University of the West Indies.
And being the poor moderator, no, sorry. I will say that I am, because I did not say thank you to my panelists, and I must say thanks to Senator Dr. Floyd Morris, and thank you to Paula Esturi, and thanks to Leroy Phillips. Thank you all for participating in this session.
Thank you too, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Shamali Cardoza Camara. I thank you very much for coming out to this event. All our participants, thank you for sharing in such a wonderful event. Thanks to my subcommittee, Jason, Chavin, Paula, and to our chairperson, Dr. Morris, for leading us in this session. I trust that you will have a wonderful rest of the evening, and you can join us on YouTube to listen to our session, to our second day of session tomorrow. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you. Thank you.